So The Mandalorian Season 3 just wrapped up. And honestly, thank God I did not waste 1 minute actually watching any of this season of The Mandalorian. This from The Hollywood Reporter. How The Mandalorian Season 3 brought cohesion to the Star Wars timeline. The Disney Plus show Season 3 finale ties together stories from every era, all leading to Disney's sequel trilogy. Yes, all roads lead to Rome, ladies and gents. When we're talking about the Star Wars Disney Plus shows, you thought that The Mandalorian was a soft reboot? Ha! Think again. And you know what? I can't exactly blame any one of you for believing that it was a soft reboot, because guess what? I believed it too. So if I'm blaming all of you for buying into the fact that The Mandalorian was a soft reboot, I'd have to lump myself into that group, and I don't really want to call myself a sucker, but I was an absolute fucking sucker. Here we go. On Wednesday, The Mandalorian Season 3 wrapped up Din Djarin and Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan's journey to reclaim Mandalore for the displaced and scarred Mandalorian people. In the process, it helped drive home that the series is bringing a narrative focus to Star Wars as it plots its return to the big screen in coming years. In an action-packed 40 minutes, Din and Bo-Katan defeat Moff Gideon, played by Giancarlo Esposito, a.k.a. Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, who was revealed this season to have escaped capture while also effectively cloning himself to create an unstoppable Force-sensitive clone army. Really? Thank God I didn't waste 1 minute of my time watching this. The season's penultimate episode also revealed Gideon's involvement with the Shadow Council, a group of Empire loyalists that are working to overthrow the New Republic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the First Order came to be. And I would not be surprised if that's how they're going to shoehorn it in, because they've already said that The Mandalorian connects to the sequel trilogy. So here's the birth of the First Order right here. The Shadow Council. Ooh! These are developments that not only serve Din and Grogu's storyline, but also drive forward to support a greater Star Wars narrative as a whole. Spinoffs might feel like studio cash grabs, because 99.99% of them are, particularly when tied to massive franchises, but Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian balances nostalgic moments for fans while still managing to enrich the franchise stories that came before it. Take that for what you will. From the first look at Baby Yoda to Moff Gideon's brandishing of the legendary Darksaber in Season 1, which, by the way, the Darksaber was not a George Lucas creation, but a Dave Filoni creation for Star Wars The Clone Wars, The Mandalorian set the tone for the nostalgic deliverance to come through throughout the rest of the series. Season 2 shocked audiences with the finale appearance of a de-aged Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, a bittersweet moment as Grogu left Din to train with the Jedi Master, only to then be completely undone in the Book of Boba Fett when Grogu goes back with Mando, completely undoing that Season 2 finale. Therefore, that had absolutely no fucking weight to it in the grand scheme of things. Just like Miguel getting kicked over the rail at the end of the second season of Cobra Kai, just to fully recover by the end of the third season. Just saying there. Similarly, the appearance of Clone Wars fan favorite Bo-Katan last season connected Din's seemingly independent tale to deeper Star Wars lore. And Season 3 incorporate elements of all three Star Wars film trilogies, along with the canon events of the animated Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. From flashbacks to Order 66 to recent appearances of Republic-era battle droids, the Mandalorian also leans heavily into its prequel-era histories, despite the fact that the Force is few and far between in Mando's corner of the galaxy. Most importantly, and perhaps what ultimately solidifies the Mandalorian's place in the Star Wars timeline, the third season drops more than just hints to the Disney-era sequel trilogy. Oh boy! Actually, I did that wrong. Oh boy! Ha ha! Despite the sequel's box office success, response to the films among fans were mixed. They're not mixed. They are overwhelmingly negative. Stop trying to put a butt fucking spin on it. The response to the sequel trilogy was mixed. No, the response to the prequel trilogy was mixed. The response to the sequel trilogy was overwhelmingly negative, with only a few butt fucking fanboys that get fucking butt hurt every time you say that The Last Jedi sucked. which I don't think The Last Jedi killed the Star Wars sequel trilogy. The Star Wars sequel trilogy was dead long before Rian Johnson came along. Rian Johnson was just the fucking patsy. Okay? As some pointed out, plot holes that didn't coalesce with the events of George Lucas's original trilogy. Two big ones come to mind: the sudden emergence of the First Order, no shit, not long after the Empire's downfall, as well as Emperor Palpatine's shocking return in The Rise of Skywalker. And Emperor Palpatine came back into the sequel trilogy because they bumblefucked The Force Awakens, which caused The Last Jedi to be completely bumblefucked, which, remember, once again, Rian Johnson was absolutely the patsy. You have J.J. Abrams that was credited for killing Star Trek in 2 movies. Then all of a sudden with Star Wars, everyone lost their collective fucking minds over The Force Awakens. It's the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. And then you get The Last Jedi to come out. That was the worst Star Wars movie ever made. Rian Johnson raped our childhood. Rian Johnson raped our childhood. And then they announced J.J. Abrams was coming back for Episode 9, and now he's the fucking Messiah. For fans and critics of the sequels, the Palpatine of it all felt strangely out of left field and was never fully addressed because Palpatine was shoehorned in. That was the real reason, right? The Force Awakens was about finding the map to Luke Skywalker. Then you get to The Last Jedi and Luke Skywalker goes, "I didn't want to be found, leave me alone." Then why the fuck did you leave a map for people to find you? And then all of a sudden, Palpatine's back from the dead. How is Palpatine back from the dead? Because plot dictates that Palpatine is back from the dead. As for how this could potentially play out in future seasons of The Mandalorian, Gideon's interest in cloning Grogu led fans to speculate that the storyline may lead to an explanation for Palpatine's survival. How does Palpatine survive a fall down the shaft of Death Star 2, of the second Death Star, and when the second Death Star went boom boom, right? It blew up into a million billion trillion little fucking pieces. Okay, how the fuck did Palpatine survive? I'll tell you how, and I just told you how 30 seconds ago, because plot dictates that Palpatine survived. Mando Season 3 inches closer to supporting that theory, as Gideon is seen discussing Project Necromancer with his Shadow Council, one of the worst names you can give, by the way, a name that suggests communicating or reviving the dead. Nah, you don't say. Also, in what appears to be the early days of what will become the First Order, what gave that away? The Shadow Council that is full of Empire loyalists. Oh, fuck a duck. The Mandalorian introduces Commandant Brendol Hux, played by Brian Gleason, father of Domhnall Gleeson, the father of First Order leader Armitage Hux, played by Domhnall Gleeson, an Imperial villain of the sequels. Yeah, the guy that has to announce that he was actually the spy, given the fact that that was already a given.
You're gonna let something off your chest. Maybe now's not the worst time.
I'm the spy.
What? You?
Yeah, that guy. Meanwhile, Mando's most obvious call out to the sequel trilogies occurred in the last 2 episodes with cameos by the Red Cloak Praetorian Guard, last seen in Episode 8, The Last Jedi, under command of Supreme Leader Snoke. Announced that this year's Star Wars Celebration, executive producer Dave Filoni is bringing this New Republic era to a close in an upcoming feature film, which likely will dive even further into the rise of the First Order. Filoni and Favreau's fill-in-the-backstory approach is built into the structural DNA of Star Wars stories, a franchise that has long gone the prequel route. Almost 20 years after Return of the Jedi, Lucas returned to tell the original story. We don't need to know that. But the formula isn't foolproof. While audiences yearn for nostalgia in their Star Wars content, it's a tricky balancing act. If left to stand too independently, a story can feel out of place or like quote-unquote filler content in an ever-connected galaxy. Your quote-unquote filler content is to fill out the Star Wars mythos, right? Is that you can have a lot of stories that are acting independent of each other without having to be connected. right? Star Wars does not need to be the MCU. Because if that were the case, then the Ewoks movies of the 1980s would be canon. The Star Wars Holiday Special would also be canon. And the moment of B. Arthur singing would technically be canon at that point.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems.
Right, there's nothing wrong with having stuff that will stand independently on its own. Not everything needs to be interconnected. With a dedicated fan base prone to turn against the franchise, a Star Wars universe with a clear timeline amidst its many moving parts, characters, and storylines is a Star Wars universe best primed for success. No, it is not. Filoni's movie was one of 3 films recently announced, along with another from James Mangold that will go all the way back to the Dawn of the Jedi, and one from Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy that will bring back Ridley as Rey for Disney's first ever post-sequel project. I'm calling it right now. Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's Star Wars movie is Episode 10. Otherwise, there's no reason to bring back Rey. And by the way, Rey isn't going to save Star Wars at this point. And with The Mandalorian as its driving force, it would seem that Lucasfilm is finally prepared to dive back into the sequels as they set the scene for a new era of Star Wars to come. And I'm going to end off this segment with this. I said this in a comment, and I apologize if you're watching this. I don't remember who commented it, but I remember replying back with something to the effect of that at this point, a change in leadership over at Lucasfilm is not going to solve the problem with Star Wars. What is truly going to solve the problem with Star Wars right now is for it to legitimately go away. And Star Wars has already done that once before. Remember, the wait time between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens was 10 years. You had 10 years in between movies. I do not count Star Wars The Clone Wars because that was intended to be a TV show first and a movie second. That was not originally intended. The 2008 Clone Wars movie was not intended to be a movie. It was intended to be 4 episodes of the TV show that they then decided to cram together and make the movie to kick off the show. But still, my point still stands. At this point, Star Wars needs to legitimately go away because at this point, the damage is truly done. And it's very clear that you have a lot of people at both Disney and Lucasfilm with gigantic fucking egos to the point where they're putting Kanye West to shame, that don't want to admit that the sequel trilogy was a false start and that they should have moved on. Right? The Mandalorian should have been a soft reboot and should have not connected to the sequel trilogy. Just leave the sequel trilogy alone. Allow everyone to make fun of it. Don't try to connect to it. Just basically don't come outright and confirm it was a false start, but behind the scenes, just admit that it was a false start and move on. But no, now they have to connect The Mandalorian to the sequel trilogy, which in my opinion is the final death knell for The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, all these Disney plus Star Wars shows, because as the old adage goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.